Hello, friends. I'm Kush Khandelwal, and this is Ageless Athlete. A few years ago, I started asking questions that would not leave me alone. Why do some people keep pushing mentally, physically, spiritually long after others burn out or break down? What does it really mean to age well when you still crave movement, meaning, and mastery? This show is my search for answers. Each week, I talk to elite athletes, everyday adventurers, and pioneering researchers who are stretching the limits of what's possible across age, injury, illness, and self doubt. You will hear hard won lessons, untold stories, and science backed strategies for building a body and mindset that lasts. For those of us joining for the first time, welcome to the show. For the rest, thank you for joining us again. Time is our most valuable asset, and I deeply appreciate you giving me your time today. Welcome to the Ageless Athlete Podcast, where we dive into stories of resilience, adventure, and thriving in the outdoors at any age. I am your host, Kush Khandelwal, speaking from my home base in San Francisco, where we explore the secrets of longevity and passion from athletes around the world. The power of the outdoors is transformative. There is something about being in nature that reminds us of what is truly essential in life. Today, we have an extraordinary guest who has dedicated her life to ensuring that everyone, regardless of ability, can access that power. Katherine Hayes Rodriguez has spent nearly 50 years championing equal access to outdoor sports, particularly for adaptive athletes. Her groundbreaking work in adaptive skiing and outdoor recreation has not only opened doors for people with disabilities, but has fundamentally changed how we think about inclusivity in the outdoor community. Catherine has been at the forefront of ensuring that no one is left behind when it comes to experiencing the joys and challenges that nature has to offer. From a journey as a young ski instructor in the 1970s to becoming a leader in adaptive sports, Catherine's story is one of perseverance, resilience, and passion. She has shaped an entire movement that has allowed thousands of people with disabilities to enjoy skiing, kayaking, hiking, and more. This episode isn't just for skiers or athletes. Catherine's message speaks to anyone who believes in the power of inclusion, the importance of breaking down barriers, and the transformative impact of spending time outdoors. Whether you are an athlete or not, you will be moved by her relentless dedication to making the world a more accessible place for all.
I'm in Truckee, California, and for breakfast this morning, I had a bowl of oatmeal with homemade granola, chia seeds, hemp seeds, almond milk, and a banana. And of course, coffee with a little bit of cream in it.
Lot of love for Truckee. And wait a second. So you already have oatmeal, but then you add granola on that oatmeal. That sounds like two different things.
Yeah, I forgot I had yogurt and I had collagen in my coffee. I mean, I'm always looking at, the older you get, the more you're looking for the protein, right? You don't just want the carbs, you want the protein to sustain you. So I added yogurt, I added collagen, and so I think I got about 30 grams of protein this morning.
Are you actually tracking your daily protein? Actually, I was recently told that I don't get enough protein. And a friend of mine advised that I should get one of those apps, which tracks your daily protein and also your micronutrients. So are you tracking like your nutrients through the day?
I used to do that a long time ago after I had kids and I was watching my weight, and I was a Weight Watchers leader and I tracked everything in what they call the little journal. Now I have a pretty good idea of what I eat each day. And again, it's all about trying to make sure I have protein at every meal or snack.
Excellent. Well, sound like a delicious and a healthy beginning to a day of some adventure. But Katherine, tell us, how old are you?
I'm 67. I'll be 68 in a couple of months.
Wow. Well, 67 years young, and happy early birthday.
Thank you.
Tell us, who are you and what do you do?
Pretty much my entire adult life, from the time I was 22 until even now, I have worked for a nonprofit organization that enables people with disabilities to participate in outdoor recreation, sports, and activities with their families. That's what I do.
That's a lifetime working in the outdoors with people with disabilities.
Yes.
And that's been your entire career.
Well, I mean, I do other stuff. I coach skiing. I serve on boards. I work for Professional Ski Instructors of America. I have a lot of different careers, but the one that's been the most important and meaningful to me is the one where my love of the outdoors can be shared with people that may not have that opportunity in their everyday life.
Remarkable. Let's talk about how you discovered adaptive skiing. And actually, I'm sorry, but what is the correct term that we should use when we are describing people who are, let's say, differently abled, but are participating in outdoor sports? Is it adaptive? Is it differently abled? What is the correct term?
At this point, when they put it in writing, you're supposed to say a person with a disability, a person with blindness, a person with autism, and I prefer to say people that are using adaptations or adaptive athletes is how I usually refer to people that are participating in our programs.
That makes sense. I have spoken with some other adaptive athletes, and sounds like that term is common at least to some other outdoor sports. I interviewed Craig DeMartino, who's an adaptive climber and an adaptive climbing instructor, and I think that's a term that's also being used. So let's stick with that. Going back to some of your beginnings with the sport and with the instruction, I understand you discovered adaptive skiing maybe, let's say, 3 or 4 odd decades ago. Tell us, what was that experience of first discovering this side of the sport?
I had graduated early from high school, and so I had this blank semester in the winter of 1975. So I moved to Tahoe and I skied at Heavenly, and I worked as a bus girl at Harrah's Casino. And the next winter I moved over to North Shore Lake Tahoe, and I was delaying going to UC Berkeley, where I was enrolled, and I had plans to do pre-med and become a doctor. And I called my parents and said, I'm really sorry, but I'm not going to make it back. I'm in love with skiing. I didn't say that. But needless to say, both my parents, who were professionals, were just very upset about this whole thing. So I lived in Tahoe and I worked menial jobs while I skied every day. And one day a friend of mine said, I heard there's some blind people skiing over at Ski Incline, it used to be called. Now it's called Diamond Peak. I said, no way. He's like, yeah. So we went over and watched the program, which was a guy named Bob Guerrero from the Rehabilitation Center for the Blind in Reno. We introduced ourselves and met him, and he said, oh, why don't you come back next week and check it out? And so we came back, and at that point I was wearing a bandana and neoprene ski pants and looking like the total ski bum. And he said, a bunch of my instructors didn't show up. Can you take out some lessons? And we're like, well, okay. So my first lesson in 1976 was a totally blind female skier. And I like to say I didn't kill her, and we survived. And that was my first ski lesson. And as I continued to work with the program, I realized that this was the population that I wanted to work with, that I felt very comfortable at my ability to work with somebody that had a diagnosis of a disability. And that changed the whole trajectory of what I was going to do, what I was going to school, where I was going to work. And it was very fortuitous that at that young age, I actually found something I love so much.
An astonishing start to this career you've had. A lot of people at that age decide to perhaps take a little sabbatical and pursue their life of passion for a little bit before they jump headlong into a career, or perhaps in your case, medical school. So you went to Tahoe in the 70s to live that dream out. Actually, for a fun little moment here, you call your parents up, and I can only imagine their surprise when you said you were not coming back to go back to college. You were going to stay and do this. So was that after that, let's say, that life-changing ski lesson that you provided? Was that like
Yes.
the moment where you suddenly felt like some clarity? You're like, oh my goodness, this is what I am being called for?
Right, because according to my parents, I was just being a ski bum and working at, I ended up working at a restaurant in Tahoe City and skiing 5 or 6 days a week at Alpine Meadows and what was then known as Squaw Valley. And they were very disappointed that I chose to waste my life. And it was that next winter that I taught this lesson and decided, no, I didn't want to go to UC Berkeley. And I ended up, it took me about 6.5 years to actually complete my degree, driving back and forth to San Jose State and in therapeutics. I think about 40 years later, or 30 years later, they came to my retirement dinner and decided that, oh, maybe I did have a real job. Anyway, it was all good, and it ended up being a wonderful career path. And, adaptive sports, our chapter of Far West Disabled Sports was the one that started adaptive sports in America. Our chapter in 1967 was a bunch of Vietnam veterans. We called them the Rat Pack, and they started adaptive skiing on the summit at Soda Springs. And from that original chapter has grown over 200 chapters around the world and the Paralympics. So I'm really proud to be a part of that chapter.
That's incredible. And I'm guessing at least a significant reason why adaptive skiing has spread the way it has in no small part been due to your efforts over the decades. But again, zeroing in on maybe that first moment, Katherine, like I have snowboarded a little bit and I've been playing outdoors for a long time. And to me, the idea of not having all my senses and all my, let's say, my faculties with me, being on the slope seems terrifying. If I can ask you to think back, please describe to us that moment when you saw this person or people skiing for the first time, and then you decided to go and teach a person yourself, I think a blind person yourself, perhaps. Please describe to us what was that like and what was going through your mind and what led to this big decision.
To be honest with you, I was terrified. Number one, I had never taught a ski lesson. I wasn't a ski instructor. And number two, she wasn't just visually impaired, she was totally blind. When you're blind guiding on the hill, you're totally responsible for their safety. So it was, like I said, I didn't kill her. But what I did see, and I mean, there's a lot of different sports for disabled athletes now. I mean, all you have to do is look at the Paralympics. There's track and field, there's basketball, there's archery, et cetera, et cetera. But of all those sports, skiing is the one thing that provides the momentum of gravity. They're moving on Earth unencumbered by their own diagnosis, missing a leg, cerebral palsy, being in a wheelchair. There's this movement and momentum that they never will achieve in their life without trying really hard. It's provided for them by the ski hill. So it's kind of the magical sport, which opens the door to all the other sports, kayaking, there's all kinds of stuff you see people doing these days. But to me, skiing and now snowboarding and the downhill momentum is the magical factor for people that
Yeah.
are not moving around so easily.
Yeah. Gravity changes everything, and something like skiing, it brings you in close contact with nature, which I think most adaptive sports are, at least the mainstream ones I'm aware of, they don't live in. Describe to us, actually, I'm just so fascinated. Describe to us that first ski lesson. Did they prepare you, Catherine, on like what was going to happen? Were you just like, how did you just like find the gumption and
I
training
mean,
to?
yeah. No, we're still really good friends. And Bobby G always says that he likes to take credit for my career because he started me. But it was kind of fraught with danger. But in those days you just flew by the seat of your pants anyway. But I was definitely learning my chops as a blind guide, where I had to have a voice that projected, because in those days we didn't have the radios that you see in the Winter Olympics where the blind guide is talking into a helmet radio. I had to call over my shoulder on every turn or ski backwards in front of her to control her speed and use my voice the whole time. Okay, you're doing great. Now let's go, 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 and turn left. Go, go. You can't ever stop talking because she has
Wow.
no relevance to what's going on with it. Yeah, we're facing downhill, now we're facing across the hill. So it was a learning experience for both of us, I would say. And I would say my first lesson was terrifying. And after all this time, I finally feel comfortable teaching. Yeah.
I mean, I would be terrified taking a normally able person out, either skiing or anywhere where there's, let's say, objective hazard involved. You took this blind person. I mean, you jumped headlong. Actually, so the person you were teaching, that person also is remarkable too, because I can't, yeah, I'll be honest, I don't know a lot of blind people, but I'm sensing most blind people, I forget blind people, most able bodied people are not out there skiing, right? Even if they had a choice, they may do something else. So tell us about this person. This is the 70s, where, again, some of these outdoor sports were even more niche than they are today. What made that person decide to go skiing when maybe some normal day-to-day things were challenging enough?
Well, the program that was at Ski Incline was actually an offshoot of the rehab program in Reno, Nevada. So Bob Guerrero, who was a recreation therapist, um, he they didn't just recreate with, they also helped them find jobs. They trained them in their activities of daily living, like how to move around, how to access the bus system in Reno. So it was a full fledged rehab program, and the recreation was just one part of it. But as Bobby always used to say, leisure is my life, and that it shouldn't all be work, because sometimes when you have a diagnosis like this gal, who had been sighted before and completely lost her sight, she had to completely readjust her entire life, not just skiing, but how does she get to the doctor? How does she brush her teeth? How does she get groceries or cook a meal? I mean, there's a whole re education process. So I thought she was very brave to go out with me. I didn't say, you're my first lesson ever, but I thought she was really brave to go out with me anyway. And, to be honest with you, I barely remember her face and I don't remember her name. I just remember the impact that it had on my entire life for the next, it's been 47 years now. I don't even know, 45 years. And it was a wonderful experience and one that I'll never forget.
Curious, yeah. If your student also felt just as transformed by their skiing introduction as a blind person, and if they continued skiing.
She,
And
she was in the season-long program, so she came back every week. I think I had her a couple more times, and then she went on to a more advanced instructor because she was skiing better. I taught the beginners because I was a beginner instructor, and so she progressed on. And Bob actually used to take a group of blind skiers, racers, and their guides back to the national races in Winter Park, Colorado. So that was another thing that we did, and they actually ran race courses even though they couldn't see the gates or the guide in front of them. I thought that was pretty brave. I don't know if I would do that, but I
yeah,
guided them. I just didn't ski behind the guide.
sure. And I think you mentioned like maybe contemporary adaptive skiing involves the use of like radios
Yep,
and headphones, and one can provide instructions and whatnot. But back in the day, you were doing that by just trying your best to stay within earshot of your
exactly. You
student.
had to be within 10 feet and you had to have a very loud voice. So we call it the guide voice. So
Guide voice.
anyway,
But
yeah, no, it was a great time, very early in the infancies of adaptive skiing, and I'm just privileged that I got to be a part of it.
let me ask you this, Catherine. Were you around, let's say, differently abled people as part of your own upbringing? I'm wondering if you had any special, let's say, uh, any honed qualities of connecting, of empathizing with your student because you already had some exposure.
I really hadn't had much exposure to people with physical and cognitive diagnosis. In my family growing up, my parents were both lived their lives of service. My dad was a doctor, my mom was in politics, and they always taught us to be empathetic and kind and compassionate. And while I didn't have direct exposure to a lot of people with those kind of diagnosis, I felt like as soon as I did, I felt like I was equipped. It's more of a feeling that you want them to have the best opportunities possible and not let them wallow in pity and give them the opportunity to be more independent. I felt like that was something I could do well.
I've been thinking a lot about energy, not just in training, but in recovery, in focus, in how we age. So when I came across NutriSense, it hit home. It's a program that pairs a 24 by 7 glucose biosensor with a dedicated dietitian to help you understand how your body responds to food, stress, sleep, and movement, and then act on the data. I chose it because I wanted something real, not another hack or one size fits all plan, just honest insight into what's actually going on inside me and how to build habits that last. NutriSense has helped over 150,000 people take that step. And if you want to try it, you can get 33% off your first month with code Ageless15 at nutrisense.io. Again, that's nutrisense.io, code Ageless15. You can also find this information on the show notes for this episode.
Got it. Now, your parents seem to have raised you well, maybe even too well, much to perhaps their own a bit of surprise and chagrin at that time. Okay, so just kind of continuing with that little story here. So you basically just forfeited your plans to go back to college and go to med school and this other career. So then, let's say you found a job with the adaptive ski industry, and then you started teaching more and more people. I'm guessing you also went through some training. Tell us a little bit about what that process was like. You have now been doing this for a few decades now. Was there a point where you started teaching and were you still gushing over that experience? Did you find that?
Well, it's kind of like being a woman before Me Too. So this is all before the ADA in 1991 and supposedly equal access for people. So the ski areas and in general the park system were very resistant to equal access because of the additional cost. And they didn't like us showing up at their ski area with a sit-down apparatus or amputee with two what we call outriggers crutches with skis or blind people. We were kind of messing up their system, and just by sheer perseverance and hard-headedness, those of us early people, we're like, we're not going away. You can't make us leave. These people have as much right as anybody else to recreate and be outside in public spaces, and there was quite a bit of prejudice. You've even seen it in national politics where people in high office make fun of people with disabilities. Quite shocking that it still happens in this day and age. And it happened a lot in the 70s and 80s. So by, I think it was mid 80s, we had formalized our training and were certified, had created a certification process for instructors of people with ski instructors, just like the Professional Ski Instructors Association, of which I've been a proud member for 41 years. They're a national organization with many, many members all over the country. They recognized adaptive as a discipline. I believe it was 1985. And that was like, holy cow, we're in. We actually have some legitimacy, at least in the ski teaching profession. So I have to say that the prejudice and discrimination that we experienced for me, the guys from the Rat Pack were experiencing it since they got back from Vietnam. So I just came in the late 70s and 80s, and it was quite shocking. And I like to think that today people have a much more open attitude towards people with disability diagnosis at all the ski areas in at least the Lake Tahoe Basin.
And sorry, did you say Rat Pack?
So they were the original group of Vietnam veterans who formed the first chapter of Disabled Sports. And my old boss, Doug Pringle, he's the guy that got it started. And then it just went national. It's like, oh, look what those people in Lake Tahoe are doing. Let's form a program out here in Ohio. Let's form a program in New York. And it just kind of spread like wildfire. It was crazy. That's my
Oh,
best
wow.
description. It was crazy, crazy, crazy times.
Oh,
And we
amazing.
traveled all over the country and gave clinics and started programs everywhere. And it was just a crazy time.
Amazing. I had no idea that perhaps the rise of adaptive sports had this connection to war veterans from Vietnam. Sounds like America had like this ill-fated experience in Asia, but it gave rise in this funny way to the opening of the doors and access to the outdoors for the disabled.
And there was a lot of people involved all along the way. I mean, even before Doug and the Rat Pack started things in the early 60s, basically, when everybody had come back, Bob Guerrero and Doug Pringle were recruited from Letterman's Hospital in San Francisco, where they were recovering from their war wounds. So, before that, there had been some people that had made adaptive equipment and were doing small things like in Ohio and Austria. But I lay claim to the fame of being part of this original chapter, the Rat Pack, the group that started it all.
This person who was your first student, was she also a war veteran?
No, she had macular degeneration, so she had a progressive eye disorder.
Got it. But the reason that this program became available to her was because this program was started as a offshoot of the Rat Pack being.
Well, right. Bob Guerrero was an offshoot of the Rat Pack, and he also worked at the Rena Rehabilitation Center or Services for the Blind. So, because he had this background in teaching adaptive skiing, he was a natural fit for the clients from Services for the Blind.
Thank you for clarifying that. The
Yeah.
other part that I perhaps gleaned from what you said was the ADA, which hasn't been around for as long as one would imagine. The evolution of the ADA also has something to do with the access to the outdoors for the disabled. Sounds like not only did you create a legacy of teaching people how to recreate in the outdoors, but you also may have had this contribution to the passing and the sheer proofing of access for the disabled in this country.
I myself didn't, but some of the people that were involved with the original chapter from the Rat Pack, they were part of the group that went to Washington, D.C. and really pushed for it, and just because a law passed, like the ADA, doesn't mean people like it. So the struggle has been to get people to accept willingly adaptive athletes without the law being forced upon them. There was a lawsuit against Squaw Valley a long time ago because they refused access to a couple of wheelchair gals that had gone through our program as skiers, and they were refused access to the tram because they were disabled and disabled people. And this was in the summer. It wasn't even in the winter. So the owner at that time was on TV saying disabled people have no right to be on a ski hill. And
Oh, wow.
it was just the wrong political time for him to say that. And that would never happen at Palisades Tahoe now because they're so accepting. They support our programs. They've made things very accessible and welcoming. And so it's a whole different ballgame now. But back then, not so much.
Incredible, Catherine. Gosh, yeah. Yeah, thank you for your contributions and allowing not just access, but also educating other skigoers and other people recreating in those in the mountains on why it is important to accept and to co-recreate with the with other adaptive athletes. Now, you went from being loud enough so that that your student could hear what you were asking them to do. Can you walk us through how your training went a little bit and what have been the advancements in ski coaching for people with adaptive needs?
Well, I didn't really have any training. To be honest with you, there was probably a group of 20 of us that created the training. We created the curriculum for the training so that instructors could take their certification exams to be a level 1, 2, or 3 adaptive. But my training was going out there and teaching dozens, if not hundreds, of adaptive lessons and learning that if somebody was a what we call a 3-tracker, which is one leg with 2 crutches that have ski tips on the bottom, what is the best way to teach them how to make a beginning turn? What is the best way to teach them how to stop? What is the best way to teach them how to side slip? So these are all curriculums that we wrote for 6 different disciplines that was accepted by professional ski instructors. So my training would be that I just had to go out and teach all the different disabilities and then write down what worked best. That was it.
Over, let's say, I don't know, 4 decades, how many people do you think have been impacted by your teaching, Catherine?
Friends, it means a lot that you're here. I pour a ton of heart into the show. The research, the interviews, the editing, it's all me, trying to share stories that matter. If Ageless Athlete has ever made you feel seen, inspired you, or just kept you company on a long drive, or better, over a run or a bike ride, I would be so grateful if you considered supporting it. Even a small amount helps keep it going, helps keep bringing the show to you for free. You can chip in at buymeacoffee.com/agelessathlete. Again, buymeacoffee.com/agelessathlete. You can find the link on the show notes as well. Thank you for listening and for being part of this.
You know, my son asked me that the other day. I have no idea. I hope that it's been significant. I wrote the first adaptive ski teaching manual, which was adopted by professional ski instructors. I've given clinics at over, in other countries and all around our country. And I just hope that what I've taught, my passion for skiing and working with people with diagnosis of disabilities, that has been passed on to the next generation. As much as I love to teach and give clinics, which I still do 2 or 3 days a week, our name is now Achieve Tahoe, and we work out of Palisades Tahoe. Our program centers at Alpine Meadows. I'm hoping that there's going to be a whole new generation of trainers and clinicians beyond me. But I would have to say probably in the thousands.
Sure.
I don't know.
Maybe. Yeah, no, it's those people.
I didn't count.
No, for sure. No, and what I'm saying is it's probably really difficult to get a correct gauge, because it's not just the people who directly passed through your hands, it's also people who were impacted, influenced, and positively directed through all your teachings, which, like you said, have been disseminated through this manual that you wrote, and the way it's inspired, yeah, ski school, ski instruction, all over the planet. A different kind of question from a blind person's perspective. I think this is a bit of a dumb question, but why is it important for this person who's visually impaired, who's already, going against the grain in executing day-to-day tasks as part of just life? Why is it important for that person to be out there learning to ski?
It could be somebody that it has a visual impairment. It could be somebody that becomes a paraplegic in a car accident. It could be a I mean, if you watch the Democratic National Convention, you saw that Tim Walz has a nonverbal ADHD kid on the spectrum. I mean, we have a ton of those kind of participants in our programs. So somebody like that, and I'll just give you an example. My oldest son was born with bilateral club feet, and we went to Shriners Hospital, which is a wonderful place, entirely non-fee based, and he had operations, he had orthopedic casting, he had care all the way up to when he was 17 and had spinal reconstruction. His life was filled with hospital visits, occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy. I mean, on and on and on. So when somebody has to work all the time just to exist, wouldn't it be nice if they had something fun or entertaining in their life? I don't think people understand, if they don't have somebody in their family or friends that has a diagnosis, just how much work it really is for that person and their family. So I like to think we're the fun factor, but if I get somebody that comes out in their wheelchair and they expect me to push them around when they've got two good arms, it ain't going to happen. They're going to learn how to push themselves. They're going to learn how to transfer themselves into the sit ski, even though their parents have always done the transfers for them. When they come to us, we're going to teach them how to be more independent. And then, the parent will come and say, "Oh my gosh, we went kayaking in the American River, the whole family. That could never have happened until we came to your Donner Lake paddle program, because we never thought that they could do that." So we're trying to get them to not be so dependent.
I see two things right away. One is, for sure, every person deserves a chance to enjoy the beautiful outdoors. The second is maybe more profound, is by the act of doing something which seems just so difficult and gnarly as going down like a ski slope, that opens pathways and possibilities for that person that they may not have realized. I mean, maybe not only for them, but maybe even their caregivers, their parents, etc. And yeah, those possibilities just open up. Let me ask you this funny question which just came to my mind, which is, let's say I am the parent of a child who is visually impaired, a blind kid, right? And they hear about your program, and they are curious but very scared. And I'm wondering if that's happened to you. But like, how would you convince those parents, but also this young person who's very curious but also very nervous, on why they should come to achieve Tahoe and take a lesson with you?
And I know that feeling of handing my infant son to a surgeon, and the fear and trepidation that you have as a parent of the unknown of how is my child going to be safe and survive this. So I totally get that. And I always tell our instructors, I'm like, sometimes you may feel like you're babysitting because you're not teaching them how to make turns, but you're just making ski runs and having fun. And I said, don't forget that the family is getting a break for a half day. This isn't our ski program, everything's private. And then in all our summer programs with horseback riding, sailing, archery, hiking, paddle sports, the family becomes a participant also. So we kind of have a little bit different in the winter and the summer, but it's all about how, number one, it's word of mouth, and we're busting at the seams at all three ski areas we work at: Alpine Meadows, Palisades, Tahoe, and North Star. We've got wait lists all the time. It's because word of mouth has spread that our program is safe. Our instructors are well trained and very compassionate, and the beginning lessons are on beginning slope, or we walk around on the flats before we go anywhere near the chairlift or the carpet, so that everything is very safe and nurturing for the beginning student.
Hello, friends. Just a quick break. This is not an ad. If you have been enjoying these conversations, I would love for you to subscribe to my newsletter. It is where I go deeper, sharing stories, reflections, and behind the scenes insights that don't always make it into the podcast. I write about what I'm learning from elite athletes and how to stay ageless in body and mind. If you have ever wanted a thoughtful, inspiring read that ties it all together: training, aging, mindset, and awe. You will love this. You can find the link in the show notes, or just head to agelessathlete.co. Again, www.agelessathlete.co, that is, to sign up. And yeah, just a couple of emails a month, and you can unsubscribe anytime. Absolutely no spam ever. Okay, back to the show.
Amazing. You have maybe done just the right amount of marketing to allow people to understand what you're offering, and the exposure to the outdoors and the ability to realize new frontiers with, let's say, a healthy dose of tough love can open a whole new world for the differently abled. One other thing that I thought to ask you, because this program started because of war veterans, how have you seen the impact of the sport on, let's say, the rehab and the reintegration of these war veterans into mainstream? Because I know that today America continues to struggle with being able to make their life more normal post the trauma of war.
There's a lot of programs for veterans now to participate in recreation across the country, whether it's winter or summer. We have a couple of what we call military to the mountains camps, where the veterans and their families come in, and we teach the veterans and their families. So everybody's kind of all together, working together. I think it's beneficial because it's really unusual to run into somebody who's been in a war zone or been on active duty who does not have post-traumatic stress disorder. Hopefully they're getting some kind of treatment for it. And besides a week of outdoor recreation, I think the outdoor recreation is just a small piece of their recuperation after, say, an active tour. But to be honest with you, a lot of the people that I've worked with in the military camps got their diagnosis after they came back. So they weren't necessarily, I'm just saying my personal experience, there's no data to support this, but because they had been in this high risk activity for so long where their adrenaline is, we're being shot at, we're having to survive the ambush, and then they come back to stateside and it's like, life is kind of pale and tepid, so I'm going to go drive my motorcycle 90 miles an hour, or I'm going to get engaged in some kind of risky behavior. So it's not just the active duty, it can sometimes be coming back here and figuring out how to live again that can cause some kind of traumatic injury. So I think we're just one small piece of their ability to fit back in with their family, their community. I don't want to say put aside, but deal with the trauma of what they have possibly been through.
Badass. For lack of a better word, being able to ski and recreate in the outdoors also acts as a release for all of those things. I mean, I like to joke, that I'm a weekend warrior, right? On the weekends I go out and do some outdoor sports. And in many ways that also acts as a release for me. It allows me to take everything that I've had during the week and whatnot, and I can go and be present and be challenged at the same time. But then these people who who came from like these unimaginable challenges of being in the war zone, they probably need something that they can release that adrenaline with, and being outside gives them just that. Maybe one other question I thought I would ask you about just the experiences of these people who come to you. And you've been doing this for like decades, and so many people have passed through you, but perhaps maybe one or two personal stories of an adaptive skier you worked with, which exemplifies why it is so important for people with disabilities to access skiing.
I just want to backtrack because there's a great story about my old boss, Doug Pringle, who was in Letterman's hospital and he had lost his leg. And when he came in, of course, there were protesters protesting in the Vietnam War and saying that they were a bunch of baby killers. And so here are all these young guys that have come back wounded from Vietnam and they're in the hospital. And I remember Doug saying to me, I was so depressed. It was like my life was over. What was I going to do? I couldn't go back into action. He had been trained at West Point as a commander. And he's like, I felt like I should have just died over there. And then Jim Winters, who started the program up on the summit at Donner Ski Ranch, came in and said, why don't you come skiing with us? And my boss, Doug's like, are you kidding me? Do what? And one of the guys that was with him said, there's pretty girls in stretch pants. And Doug said, oh, sign me up. so, it doesn't have to just be about skiing. It can be about living again. And, a lot of people that I've worked with, there was a kid that got an award at our most recent fundraiser who was biking with his dad. They live in the Bay Area. And he got hit from behind by a truck and dragged for, I don't know, a half mile or something. So he was in the hospital for over a year, recuperating, going through the halo and the striker frame. And, he became a paraplegic, but his family was very supportive. And he ended up coming to go skiing. And I think it's changed his life because he thought his life was done. I'm in a wheelchair. I used to be this big strapping guy, and now I'm reduced to a wheelchair. Well, now he's one of the best skiers on the mountain. You know,
Wow.
he may be in a sit down ski, but he can ski faster than his family now. And we're having trouble finding instructors that are good enough to teach him. So, I mean, it can be a story of great sorrow or a story of great triumph, basically.
That's an amazing story. That person may have lost the use of their legs,
Yes.
but they did not lose their athleticism, their fire, their drive that perhaps that they had before they lost so much of that, so much of their physical abilities, and then find, let's say, a new lease into their sports with the help of your work and skiing provided them. Yeah, that's remarkable. One other thing I would just ask you, generally speaking, that I've had two extraordinary adaptive climbers on the show, but generally speaking, or maybe more macro, what is the state of access to the outdoors for the differently abled today? Yes, we have these schools that people such as yourself have been leading, but what about other sports? What about starting things like being able to go hike in our national parks? What about being able to uh, get on a bicycle? Has the state of advancement in both the laws and the infrastructure where it needs to be, or is there so much more that can be done?
Well, again, I'm going to compare this to women, where we weren't able to have a credit card or drive a car or whatever until the 60s or 70s, and we've come a long way, baby, but we're not done yet. There are still areas in the United States, or even in my world in Tahoe, Truckee, where women may not be paid equally as men are, or whatever. So I think it's the same thing with adaptive, whereas it's not uncommon to see a person with a diagnosis of a disability outdoors recreating. It is not always accepted. So, in that way, I can go to the parking lot and see that somebody I know that is not disabled is using their friend's handicap placard to park in handicap parking. So, I mean, we've come a long way, but we still have a long way to go, would be my description. We're always fighting for equal access.
Right on. I come from India, and the access to services and the acceptance for the differently abled is, if anything, much worse than it is in the US. I think it lags behind, just the same way the economic industries lag behind. And I was actually surprised, maybe pleasantly surprised, that the Delhi metro, the urban train system, had seating now for the handicap, and it was actually called differently able seating and did not used to exist before. And this might just be lip service, and many people, I'm guessing most people on that train probably don't even understand what being differently able means. But I think even any beginnings, even if they're symbolic, whatnot, are important, because at least they get some seats into public consciousness and they open some doors. Okay. Thanks for sharing all that. Okay, sorry, changing tracks just a little bit. Let me ask a little bit about yourself, and your journey and your family and your upbringing. So your teaching, or your career, or your life that has been spent working with the ski industry and working with adaptive athletes, I'm guessing it has perhaps changed who you are. It has shaped your worldview, right? And so much of that has likely carried over to your family, to your sons. So I'm just curious, how does your family think about what you do? What do your sons think about the impact your mom has made?
Well, of course, they're really supportive. It's kind of annoying to them that whenever they go anywhere, oh, you're Catherine's son, because our program is well known in this area. And, they're both athletic in their own way. And neither of them has chosen to go into my field, but my husband has always been a staunch supporter. He's helped to build equipment, he's volunteered at the programs, he stood by my side while I had to make speeches. So he's been a great supporter of my career. And when I had to travel internationally, he was always here with the kids. I think that it just is, it's like any career that a woman has. Your family deals with it and keeps going on.
Sorry, for a second, I heard you say you had to make speeches. Are these speeches perhaps lobbying for access? Can you speak yeah, I think we didn't spend enough time on this. And I think you're very humble, but can we spend a moment, Catherine, and can you just illustrate what that fight was like and continues to be, to not just change the laws, but make those laws actually be adopted in the parks and alike?
When the Americans with Disabilities Act passed in the early 90s, the reaction from the ski industry was fear and trepidation. What are we going to have to do? This is terrible. It's going to cost us so much money. And there was a group of us that were sponsored by Disabled Sports National and the Professional Ski Instructors of America. And we went around to different ski industry conventions, like the National Ski Industry Association in California. And we would talk to them about what the ADA would mean for ski areas, what they would have to do to enforce Title III, saying that there has to be equal access for as much for an adaptive skier as there is for an able-bodied skier. People didn't understand what that meant. So I remember walking into a room where I was to give the presentation, and I opened the door and I kind of walked in quietly, and it was a room there was 100 men around this round table. And the guy running the meeting said, "The secretaries are in the other room." And I said, "Excuse me, sir, I'm the presenter.
Oh, God.
And I'm Katherine Hayes Rodriguez." And he said, "Oh, okay, well, why don't you sit on the front?" But it was like this instant assumption that I'm somebody's secretary in the wrong room. And to be honest with you, it was a very hostile environment. And we did our very best to convince them that a person with a disability that comes to your area brings with them 2.8 people who eat, buy tickets, buy lodging, rent ski equipment. So we were trying to show them not only is it the right thing to do, but it's a good business thing to have a person with a disability come, because their family's going to come with them. So over a period of decades, I think the ski industry is much more accepting than it used to be. But to be honest with you, the hostile atmosphere was a bit of a challenge, but something that we were able to kind of work through.
It goes back to when we started talking, you talked about like the Me Too work that was going on before the Me Too movement. And it is certainly appalling in many ways. I mean, the challenges that you had to face and overcome, which went beyond just the core work that you were doing on the slopes, working with the adaptives. And then there's one other thing that I I was thinking of when you were speaking, which is trying to lobby and get access with the industry. It's like when working on their conscience isn't enough. You have to be adaptive yourself and come up with an appeal to their bottom line. And a combination of both of those things, and perhaps maybe the threat of legal action, has worked over the years. Now, going back to talking about your family a little bit, Catherine, before we met this morning, you shared with me this interesting clip about your family and your mother, and I think in my mind there is this beautiful connection between the work that you have done to improve access for the disabled. But before that, your mom was helping, again, push through barriers to achieve equality for all. So, in some ways, you brought forward talents from your upbringing and equality. Can you tell us, what did your mom do? And why the work your mom did so important?
I'm really proud of my mom and my dad, who supported my mom in her political career. My mom was Janet Gray Hayes. She was the mayor of San Jose for 2 terms and had been on the city council for 2 terms before that. And she was the first female mayor of a major metropolitan city in the United States. And consequently, in the years after she became elected, San Jose County and Santa Clara County came to be known as the feminist capital of the United States. We spawned Zoe Lofgren, Susie Wilson, Susan Hammer, Nancy Pelosi, Dianne Feinstein. We're all in the Northern California where women in politics was actually acceptable. They just named the City Hall Rotunda after her, which I'm very pleased in her honor. And she had a legacy of trying to get the unrepresented in the city and community of San Jose represented. And I'm really proud of her legacy and how she worked to help everyone. That was her stance.
Which years was she the mayor?
Her political career was 1973 till 1984. So the last 2 terms.
Got it. Wow. Well, I mean, obviously, not only did she achieve so many milestones for women and for equality in the Bay Area, she perhaps opened the pathway for somebody like you, for her own child, to also be inspired. And I just think it's funny how, on a lighter note, how your mom was doing groundbreaking work, but then when it came to her own kin, maybe going in a similar path, there was fear and trepidation because she probably wanted maybe more conventional safety and success for you, but sounds like you were determined, just like your mom was, and you went on. I'm curious, do you think you made your mom proud, or your parents proud?
I hope so. I mean, I've tried to live a life of service for others as they did, and not everyone can do that or feels the need to do that. And when I look at national politics today and how divided we are as a country, I just feel that what has been missing is the unity and bringing together people in a community or a city or for a cause. I hope that they would be proud. My dad was a doctor and he worked in downtown San Jose with a lot of underserved populations. So what I learned from my mom and my dad is you just don't give up. You just hang in there and you just don't go away. Mom just didn't go away. They didn't want her there. She was a woman. She was the only woman, a bunch of men, and they treated her badly, and she held her head high and just hung in there and outlasted everybody. You just
Mm.
outlast everybody, basically, is what you do.
Did your parents or your family take you to the slopes when you were young and teach you how to ski?
My dad taught me to ski when I was
Mm.
5. So he and his brother used to drive from Berkeley to Sugar Bowl, and they would hike up on their skis. They'd get maybe 4 runs the whole day. So that was before there was chairlifts at Sugar Bowl. He taught all his kids to ski, and my mom learned at a later age. And I wonder sometimes if he regretted doing that. To me, we all know how to ski, but I was the one that just was it. I was just crazy about it. So
I have to mention my parents introduced me to the mountains, to to trekking and hiking and backpacking. And then when I decided to become a rock climber and decide to surf and whatnot, I think maybe there's something similar where, once you open the gates, you don't decide how far.
no going back.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah, totally. Over this career and 4 decades of the work you're doing, I'm curious, have there been any low points, Catherine? The work you've done and keep doing is very challenging in all kinds of ways. And I'm curious, what might have been some of those low points, and what strategies and what helped you overcome those and help you stay focused?
But probably my low point was when I was diagnosed with adult onset epilepsy. So I did have several decades of what we call uncontrolled seizure disorder, where I was trying to figure out how to have the right medications so I could continue to ski, live, drive. I was told for a number of years that I couldn't have children. And so when I found the right doctor, I was able to move on with my life and kind of stabilize things. But you really don't realize just how much it's going to affect you and everyone around you. And I feel fortunate that I'm healthy now and stable. And I was able to have my older son. We've adopted our younger son, but I did have birth with my older son, and that was something I never thought could ever possibly happen. And it did. And I felt like anyone with a serious diagnosis that affects every part of your life, that I kind of had to crawl out of the basement on that one. And it took a couple decades. Yeah.
Wow. And did you already have, let's say, some symptoms of, did you say adult onset epilepsy? Did you already have those symptoms when you got diagnosed? I mean, I don't know enough about it, but I'm sensing that people have epilepsy for some time before they actually get clinically diagnosed. So I'm guessing you probably were suffering until you were, until they formally told you you had that. And then you were fighting this as you were continuing your career and raising a family. Did it affect the work you were doing? Like, did you have difficulty because you were doing some very physically and mentally difficult work before you became a ski instructor? You were a skier and, let's say, a lifelong athlete yourself. And those of us who get so much, let's say, fulfillment out of our bodily faculties, in some ways I feel we are like, more crushed when we get hit by something like this. So I'm guessing it must have also affected you mentally, that all of a sudden you're like, you have so much pride in being able to do the work you do and ski at a high level. Any strategies you found that helped you cope and at least fight back some of the I don't know, the mental challenges that come with the diagnosis and the impairment that you suffered?
I think anyone with a severe diagnosis, whether it be a traumatic injury, whether it be cancer, whether what accompanies that is the emotional component of perhaps feeling depressed that things are not the way they used to be. I knew that I was never going to live what we call a normal life again, and I had to kind of process that. And definitely, I think for a lot of people that have a serious diagnosis, whether it's physical or emotional or mental, is processing out of that in a healthy way. And, I did a lot of different things. I changed my life. I took a less stressful position. I don't eat aspartame. I get enough sleep. The things that all are triggers for my condition, I take the right medicine. Those are things that I had to learn to change. And you really don't have a choice. Again, I had a supportive husband and family, and we really wanted to have kids, and that became a possibility. And once you have kids, you got to stop feeling sorry for yourself, right? You don't have any choice. So life goes on, and I just got out of it, and I feel pretty fortunate at this point.
Sure. You have to find, let's say, maybe the resolve and maybe some new techniques and adaptations that have helped you cope. Your own journey as an athlete, you are 67 now. You have been, let's say, you have been on the slopes for 62 years, if I get my math right, since you were like a little toddler. It's a demanding sport, and I'm guessing being an instructor can be doubly demanding. How have you, let's say, both adapted your teaching methods, but then also your own training, so that you can continue to be, resilient, vibrant, to both enjoy skiing for yourself and keep giving back?
So it's kind of a longevity journey for me, whereas in the old days, when I was doing a lot of wheelchair transfers and lifting people onto the chairlift and picking heavy people up, I did a lot of strength training in the gym. Now that I'm not the person that has to lift everybody anymore, I definitely have a year-round conditioning program to help me prepare for the winter season. So I'm on the hill 5 to 6 days a week. 1 day a week, I work at the cross country area at Tahoe Donner in Truckee. And so I get in a day or two of cross country skiing. But mostly I'm at the downhill area, Alpine Meadows or Palisades, Tahoe. So since I'm on the hill 5 days, 6 days a week, I don't necessarily train outside of skiing from December through April. May and June and July are cardio, mountain biking, swimming, paddle boarding, anything I can do to get at least 60 minutes of cardio 5 to 6 days a week. I stretch every day without fail. And that's my big thing, core and stretching every night. And then August 1st is when I start back in with the strength training 2 to 3 days a week on top of the cardio. And also because balance is a learned skill, I do 1 to 2 sessions of 15 minutes a week of balance training on a pad or a half roller or a basu, where I'm going on and off, one-legged balance.
Oh, wow.
Anything I can do to help my balancing. That's kind of my training regimen to keep safe on the slopes, so I say.
It sounds like a very comprehensive program indeed, and you and meticulously planned out. And I was curious, yes, on how do you stay in shape for the off season, the summer months when you are actually not on the slopes. And sounds like you do that mix of cardio, strength training to some degree, but then also stretching and balance training. If you were to stack rank all of these things, which parts of this program do you think are the most essential to keeping that vitality as you age?
So the flexibility routine, and I do 3 deep core exercises every night. It's like a half 20 to 30 minute routine. If I neglect to do that, I definitely feel stiff or not able to perform as well the next day. Say if I go out on a mountain bike ride or whatever, I feel that I mountain bike ride a couple, 2, 3 times a week, and that builds some strength. But for downhill skiing, it's not so much cardio as it is strength and balance. So, in those 3 months preceding the ski season, I really work hard on my balance and my strength.
Right on. In some ways, some of that keeps you mentally sharp as well, because, again, another gravity sport like mountain biking probably helps you keep your senses primed, because
Exactly.
you are doing all those things. Catherine, I came across this term recently that I have stolen from an adult, an accomplished surfer that I had on the show. It's called being a vulnerable adult learner. And many of us who haven't had, let's say, a chance to pursue a sport or discover it in our later years. So, for example, myself, I snowboarded a few times at Mammoth and Tahoe like 13 years ago, and I haven't gone back since. And somehow I still have some aspirations of getting back into snow sports. And so, how would a vulnerable adult learner like myself and with some aspirations but also some fear, so one is that there is fear that I would suck, I'm good at some things, but this would be starting something new. And actually, I remember when I did take when I did snowboard back, again, like 15 years ago. Yeah, I just started going on blacks, and I would tumble, and somehow I didn't, I don't know, kill myself. So somebody like me, if I was to desire to get back into snow sports again, what might be the top three things I should do to make that learning experience fulfilling?
Most ski areas now have what they call the beginner packages. And I'm a big advocate for that because number one, you're with an experienced instructor. They give you the equipment, the lift ticket, and up to three lessons. Like Palisades Tahoe has a great program where at the end of the 3 days you get a season's pass. It doesn't matter what ski area you go to, every ski area now has beginner ski and snowboard packages, and you get a beginner lesson on terrain that's well suited for your skill level, as opposed to your friends dragging you to the top of KT and saying you're going to be fine, and then they take off and you're at the top of a black diamond. Now anymore at the top of KT, they have skull and crossbones signs for people so they don't go down those kind of runs. But I'm a big advocate for a professional instructor who will guide you gently into the land of skiing so that it is a high risk sport, and people do sustain pretty bad injuries. So if I would lean on a program that's already established rather than having your buddies take you somewhere that's not really appropriate for you.
Okay, got it. Well, I feel heartened that there are perhaps programs for people with, let's say, more, yeah, slightly more fragile bodies, but the desire to want to start something new. And I think that applies to not just snow sports, but everywhere, is to access resources that are available and go down that path. Closing off our conversation, Catherine, do you think you are aging gracefully?
Golly gee, I hope so. I really do. I think so. I'm still active. I usually take a day of rest a week. I try to mix it up. I try to engage in society in a successful manner and have friends and family to engage with. I think part of aging gracefully, again, kind of, you're an active person, you understand the importance of staying active in order to live a long life. I think once we sit on the couch and start watching the TV or reading magazines, I think our quality of life is going to diminish. So I really believe in an active lifestyle. I believe in getting out and engaging with other people so that you don't get lonely. I'm still working a little bit. I'm not completely retired, although I keep saying I'm going to. It hasn't quite happened yet. So I think that I am aging gracefully, and I hope to do so for a few more years.
Catherine, you took on this accidental opportunity to teach somebody how to ski, and that completely changed your life trajectory. And I sense that the gift that you've given others, in some ways, it has come back to you. Can you tell us why is it important for the everyday person to volunteer to help somebody else? How does that even selfishly impact their lives?
I think there's a lot of different ways to volunteer. Some people may not have the time or the desire to, say, volunteer at a program like ours, Achieve Tahoe, although I do have to say that we're known as the romance capital of Lake Tahoe because we've had so many marriages come out of our program from like-minded, kind people who like to ski coming together. But I mean, volunteering is working on a trail or picking up trash on the side of the hike that you've gone on. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to volunteer and do good, and it doesn't have to be in a structured manner. And I've been lucky that I've been interacting with wonderful volunteers for my entire adult life. But if you can't be in a program, you can't volunteer for the political committee, or you can mow your next door neighbor's lawn. Volunteer to do that, and not live a life solely fulfilled by yourself, but being a part of your community and helping other people that you know. That, to me, that's part of volunteerism.
Very helpful. Catherine, do you have a mindfulness practice of any kind that helps you stay centered?
Every morning, I get my coffee with my collagen and I go back to bed and I meditate for about 15 minutes, or I'm trying to just, my mind's always, the Rolodex is always flipping. Got to do this, got to go, blah, 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 blah. So I work on quieting my mind and having the stream just run through it, cleansing my thoughts and staying very quiet, because the world is such a noisy place that if I take the time to do that 10 to 15 minutes of quietude, it seems to really reset me and keep me balanced for the rest of the day.
How long have you been doing this practice, and have you actually observed some more tangible changes in which have an impact on your life?
I have noticed changes, and my spiritualism has to do with appealing to a higher power. I'm very grateful. Every morning I say I'm very grateful. I'm grateful I woke up. I'm grateful I'm healthy. I'm grateful for my family, for where I live, my opportunity to go for a wonderful mountain bike today. And then I put it out to the universe. Can you please help me to be a more humble person today? Can you please help me to speak in a kind manner to my husband? So I feel that by practicing a little bit of gratitude and appealing to a higher power than myself, sometimes it makes me feel like I'm part of this great big universe that's out there. I'm not just this alone individual. So yeah, I think it's helped significantly in a way that may not be able to be measured.
Some of perhaps the most powerful things are the hardest to measure. And yeah, I have a little meditation practice that I started somewhat consistently a while ago. And then I make the excuse that my morning routine with my dog, I'm a single dog dad, was keeping me. But funnily enough, I actually went and meditated this morning after a gap because my dog is with some friends. So yeah, I'm hoping that both my start today and your words today will help me continue the practice tomorrow and day after. And then yeah, maybe just a couple of fun questions to round out the conversation. Catherine, what has been the best use of $100 in recent memory?
Hmm. Well, I had to go and buy a sweater at a store, which I never clothes shop anymore. You know, I look for the deals on Patagonia and REI and buy outdoor stuff, but I had to go to a department store and buy a sweater for the ceremony that I was attending in San Jose. So I guess that would be my best. I would much rather have spent the $100 on a new pair of mountain biking gloves or some wax for my cross country skis, but it was essential that I have this nice sweater and look cultivated in a city dwelling. So that was the best, most recent use of $100.
Sounds like, yeah, that department store
Yeah.
provided salvation in
Yes,
this
exactly.
in
I
that
mean, a
moment
place
of
I never go to anymore.
ab- absolutely. Catherine, what is one meal that you could eat every day besides the healthy breakfast that you shared earlier?
I started making this thing with tofu, and my husband hates it, but I put tofu and maple syrup and peanut butter and some other things in almond milk into a blender and some chia seeds, and I blend it up and I make a pudding. So it's a protein pudding, and then I melt some dark chocolate and put it on top. So that's like my kind of dirty secret. It's
Oh,
got
wow.
chocolate, but it's got a protein packed tofu, and it's a dessert, which is my favorite meal of the day is dessert. So
That's amazing. I make a lot of tofu, including tofu scrambles for breakfast. I'm a vegetarian athlete, but this thing that you just shared, it sounds almost like pudding like. I'll have to ask you offline for the recipe. I'm curious if I should go shop for silky tofu or firm tofu, which will help me make this dessert successfully. And then finally, Catherine, if there was a giant billboard, you live close to 80. So let's say there was a giant billboard on 80, and you could leave any message for people out there. What would it say?
my favorite book was The Little Prince. Have
Ah,
you heard of it?
yeah, Antoine Saint-Exupéry. Yeah, it's a beautiful book.
And there's a saying that the little prince says that what is essential to the heart is invisible to the eye. And I always have believed that. And I would put it on a billboard. I don't know if people would actually get it, but it's a kind of a mantra that I believe in. The trappings, the nice mountain bike, the newest skis, the nicest clothes. I think it's more about our experiences in life and how we affect the other people around us and the legacy that we leave on earth. I mean, those are nothing that you can pay money for or buy in a store. And I believe that what is essential to our hearts is invisible to the eye. So that's what I would put.
Could you please repeat that mantra one more time so it is cemented not just in my mind, but also in the mind of our listeners?
What is essential to the heart is invisible to the eye.
That's it, folks. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Ageless Athlete Podcast. I hope you enjoyed this show just as much as I enjoyed creating and producing it. Whether you are an athlete looking to push your limits or someone striving to maintain a healthy, active lifestyle as you age, there is always something new to learn. From Ageless Athlete, we bring you a fresh episode each and every week. If you liked what you heard, we would love it if you would take a moment to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an update. And if you really liked what you heard, please leave us a review, crush those 5 stars on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever else you listen to your podcasts. It helps us reach more people who are passionate about staying strong and resilient, no matter their age. Don't forget to visit our website and leave your email so I can send you occasional insights, stories, and tips to keep you inspired and motivated on your journey. You can also follow us on Instagram at Ageless Athlete Podcast and on YouTube at Ageless Athlete Podcast as well for even more great content. All of these links are available on the show notes for this episode. This show is entirely produced by me, Kush Khandelwal, based out of California with the help of my trusted adventure pup, Roger. Until next time, keep challenging yourself. Keep pushing those limits. Stay mentally and physically fit. Continue doing what you love to do. And my friends, stay ageless.
Friends, this is not an ad. This is just a quick message to those amongst us who are listening to Ageless Athlete podcast for the first time. I would love it if you would hit subscribe and follow on your favorite podcast app, whether it's Apple Podcast or Spotify or Stitcher or Overcast or what have you. We bring you stories and routines and other inspiration from elites in the world of the best outdoor sports. In each episode, you will find how these athletes stay connected to the outdoors, maintain peak performance, and continue to thrive as they age. I encourage you to look through prior episodes and listen to a couple and see if they resonate. And then, come back next week. We release an episode each week. And I am really inspired to bring you some of the best stories from the world of the outdoors. Okay, back to the show.